with a roll call just to make sure who all is still on board. Kevin Albrecht.
Here.
Randy Dirth.
Here.
Donnie Hunter.
Here.
Carl Hurst.
Here.
Wade Heaton. And Brett Selman is not present today. Is that correct? Have you all had a chance to review the agenda for today?
Yeah.
Yes.
So everyone's reviewed the agenda. We'll go to item number 2 on the agenda, which is the Wildlife Board stipulation for Van Woerkom. Greg Hansen, Assistant Attorney General, you're going to go ahead and present that to us.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Greg Hansen, Utah Attorney General's Office, assigned to the Division of Wildlife Resources. This agenda item is the presentation of a stipulated agreement and proposed order in the matter of Eric D. Van Woerkom's big game hunting privileges. If you'll recall, this matter came before this board once before in the fall of 2019, wherein the board held a formal hearing to consider an alleged trespass incident that occurred in the fall of 2017 during the archery elk hunt. During that formal hearing, the board took evidence from both Mr. Van Woerkom's counsel and the state, and at the end of that hearing entered an order suspending Mr. Van Woerkom's big game hunting privileges for a period of 2 years, running approximately from March 2019 through March 2021. Mr. Van Woerkom, through counsel, judicially appealed that decision, and during that judicial appeal period, the state and Mr. Van Woerkom's counsel have continued to discuss and negotiate on the matter. And we believe we've arrived at an acceptable compromise that both addresses this immediate issue and some other related issues that are associated with Mr. Van Woerkom's issues before the Wildlife Board. Both parties, both the state and Mr. Van Woerkom's counsel, approached the court and requested that the court remand this issue back before the Wildlife Board to hear the stipulation and enter an amended order. The terms of that compromise are included in the stipulated agreement that is part of your board packet. But maybe the most pertinent part of the stipulation isn't the amended suspension period, modifying the suspension term from a 2-year suspension to approximately a 16.5-month suspension time. The proposed or the stipulated agreement and amended order would end Mr. Van Woerkom's suspension period August 14th, 2020. The state looked pretty hard at this compromise, and we feel that the amended suspension period is acceptable, and entering into the stipulated agreement was in the state's best interests. And we would request that the board entertain that proposed order and amended suspension period. Just for the chairman's and board's notice, while I was just giving this presentation, Mr. Van Woerkom's counsel looks like he had sent an email that he's having a hard time logging on to this meeting. And so maybe if the board has the ability to hold off just 5 minutes until Mr. Van Woerkom's counsel is able to log on, I would like to give him the opportunity to. But from the state's perspective, that is our approach to the stipulated agreement and proposed order.
And I just say, Greg, we're okay.
We'll let them off.
Any questions from the board? We have one more counselor that's here representing the division. You want to go ahead?
Good morning, everybody. This is Mike Begley, Assistant Attorney General. I'm counsel for the Wildlife Board, and I'm appearing in the same room as the chairman. And Greg, I'm representing the board, and just to make sure it's clear that it's perfectly okay until we find out when Van Woerkom's counsel can get on.
Excellent. Thank you for your patience.
Byron, I would also, once he's able to get on.
Got questions for the board members. While we're waiting for the Van Woerkom's counsel, would you like to go ahead and we can start with the other counsel, which is here and present, and start with that one, then we'll go back to Van Woerkom when his counsel arrives. Greg, is that
So,
something?
Mr. Chairman, not to interrupt, but I just got an email from Mr. Van Woerkom's counsel, and they're comfortable with the board proceeding. In their email, they indicated that they agree with the state's recommendation, as would be indicated by our stipulated agreement.
Well, good. So that answers that question. With that information, brings us back to the Wildlife Board stipulation for Van Woerkom. Does the board want to go into a private conference to discuss this, to come up with a motion? Or how would you like to handle that? I suggest that we do go into a private session.
I would agree. I think that going into a private session would be good.
This is Carl. I also agree with that.
Ms. Tony, I agree with that.
Do we need a motion?
This is Randy. I agree also. I do have one question though for Greg. In the paperwork there on item 6, it talks about aggravating factors, and down under 6C, the third one where it talks about is an avid hunter. Help me understand that. Is that a negative thing to be an avid hunter, or is it something that the state claimed he was that they couldn't prove? Or help me understand that as an aggravating factor. I just don't understand that very well.
So typically the state will try to align their suspension recommendations with the experience and expected knowledge of the individual that they're pursuing suspension on. So from the state's perspective, Mr. Van Woerkom has a long history of hunting in Utah, and therefore we viewed some of the alleged violations as more egregious than they would be if he was a novice or brand new hunter. Opposing counsel and Mr. Van Woerkom felt that was maybe an inappropriate characterization, and that his experience and knowledge of the hunting world shouldn't play into this analysis. And I don't want to read in words for opposing counsel, but that is usually an aggravating factor that we look to. If you look at the way the stipulation is worded, it is just noting that was an aggravating factor that the lower hearing officer and the board considered. Not that this proposed stipulation would correct or change that. It's just purely noting it.
Okay. It wouldn't. I don't think it'd change anything. I just want to make sure I understood that. Thank you.
Yeah. We do try to look at and view the individual's knowledge and experience in the hunting world as part of our process.
Okay.
Mike, are we in private session now?
Mr. Chair, I can still see you, so you're not private, at least from my chair.
Okay.
Byron, this is Carl. I believe I will have to sign off and sign on a new phone number. So as soon as do we need a motion to go in closed session?
Yes, we do. In a second. Do I have a motion to go into private session?
Yes, Byron, I'll make a motion that we go into private session.
A motion by Donnie. Do we have a second?
It's Carl,
This is
second.
Randy also.
Got 2 seconds. All those in favor? Kevin Albrecht,
Yes.
Randy,
Yes.
Donnie Hunter,
Yes.
Carl Hurst,
Yes.
Wade Heaton. Wade? Well, we have a quorum. We'll go into a private session. Hold on just a
I
minute.
will. Kevin Albrecht will need an additional phone number also.
Mr. Hansen, this is Mike Bigley. Just out of clarification procedurally, the board has now voted to go into private session to deliberate on the motion to consider the joint stipulation and amend that order. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Technical team. For those participating via YouTube, we will place a clock up and a time-lapse video so that you can tell the connection is still live. The feed from the virtual boardroom will be muted at that time until the board reconvenes after their private discussion. So don't hesitate to check that. YouTube feed will remain up. It will just be silent with the clock at this point.
Okay, so now would be the time.
want to do a mic check before we go live again in case Mr. Hamilton wants to speak, but just wanted to note that while you guys were in executive session.
Okay, we're back on live on YouTube. Counselor for Mr. Van Woerkom, is there anything you would like to comment on? Can you hear us?
I can hear you and I appreciate it. I apologize. I was having technical difficulties on my end with my plugin. Mr. Hansen did a wonderful job in presenting this. I would just add that this really is a compromise that we worked on for quite a lengthy period of time. And when you compromise, neither party gets exactly what they want, but that the state is getting something out of this. Mr. Van Woerkom had appealed, as Mr. Hansen talked about, but Mr. Van Woerkom had also served a notice of claim upon the state, and there is a release that's going to be executed if this is approved, in which Mr. Van Woerkom will release all of its claims against the state, which I think is important to the state. And the state also receives the fact that Mr. Van Woerkom will dismiss his appeal. And Mr. Van Woerkom receives the things that were most important to him was that the clarification with respect to the issues that had happened previously are being corrected. In essence, the language was really important to him. There were 2 aggravating factors that were just wrong, and the state, as you see in the stipulation, has admitted that, and we've corrected those things so that they have been corrected. And most importantly, his term of suspension has been shortened. So we believe that this is a compromise that is beneficial to both sides, and hope that you will ratify it.
Thanks, Mr. Hamilton. Mike, you want to go ahead and comment?
Chairman, you kind of identified the question just for clarification for the record, but Mr. Hamilton, could you just please just identify yourself for the record, just so that we have that as appearance?
Can you do that again? You were on mute.
Yes, this is Blake Hamilton on behalf of Mr. Van Woerkom.
Thanks, Mr. Hamilton. With that, we'll go back to the board. I think we're ready for a motion to consider the joint stipulation and amend the order. I'll just turn that over to the board for discussion or a motion. So we're open for a motion.
This is Randy. If you can hear me, I'll make a motion that we approve the stipulation order. I think it's case number 2018-00032 in the matter of the privileges of Eric D. Van Woerkom to hunt big game in the state of Utah, as this stipulation shows.
Have a motion from Randy. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Who is that?
This is Wade.
Wade, okay. We have a motion and a second. Are there any questions on the motion? Or any discussion?
Chairman, I'd like to have some discussion.
Okay.
This has been a very difficult case and a very difficult situation, I believe, for everyone involved, from Mr. Woerkom to the division, to the board, to everybody involved. There's been a tremendous amount of work and discussion that's gone into this. I mean, we all sat on this. It was a difficult decision to come to. I believe we were correct in our initial assessment, but over time and through the discussion work, there's been a tremendous amount of mitigating and maybe some aggravating. One of the biggest problems with this is we don't really want to set precedents for the future, but we believe that the compromise stipulation is the correct direction to go. And so what I would do is caution the board, caution everybody that I don't believe this should set precedents for anything. There is a wide spectrum of discussion and both mitigating and aggravating that went into this. I do support the motion. I just would caution that this not set precedents for the future.
Yeah,
Thanks.
this is Randy. I totally agree with that. There were some unique factors with this case that that happened, and so it shouldn't set any precedents going forward with other cases.
Any other discussion? If not, I'll call for a vote by a roll call. Kevin Albrecht,
Yes.
Randy Dearth,
Yes.
Donnie Hunter,
Yes.
Carl Hurst,
Yes.
Wade Heaton.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimous. I'd like to thank everyone for that portion of our agenda. And thanks, Mr. Hamilton, for your input.
Thank you again, and I apologize for the technical issues on my end.
Okay, we'll move to our next item on the agenda. Agenda item number 3, the Wildlife Board stipulation for Richins. Greg Hansen, you want to give us the overview on this?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Greg Hansen, Utah Attorney General's Office, representing the Division of Wildlife Resources. This agenda item is a presentation of a stipulated agreement and proposed order in the matter of the hunting privileges of Mr. Eric Richins. This appeal arises out of a 2016 archery elk hunt, wherein the state alleges that Mr. Richins took a trophy bull elk without a valid permit. The original suspension process has gone through our informal hearing officer, and Mr. Richins has timely appealed that before the board. Pending or prior to this meeting, the Division of Wildlife and Mr. Richins, through his counsel, Aaron Owens, have been working on a stipulated agreement that has been included as part of your board packet. This would resolve the pending appeal and enter an amended order so that we don't have to go through a formal hearing process. As you'll see, we've come really close and we've reached an agreeable compromise, but at the 11th hour, both the state and Mr. Richins' counsel have become privy to some information that we weren't aware of as we were negotiating the stipulation. And so we would ask the board continue this matter and not enter the order during today's meeting, but allow us to continue to discuss, and we'll present this at a subsequent wildlife board meeting after we've had the ability to kind of look through some more of this information. Mr. Richins' counsel, Aaron Owens, is online here, and I want to make clear to the board that this was definitely an 11th hour issue, and is not it's not an issue central to the state of Utah. It's some neighboring information that came from neighboring states. So we can't readily get that information and analyze it. So we just need a little bit more time before we ask the board to entertain this issue and enter an order. With that, I might defer to Mr. Owens if he has any further clarification, but I'd be happy to take questions from the board.
No further clarification on our part. It's as Mr. Hansen said, it's something that just came up that we just want to make sure we flesh out completely before we go forward with this. We don't have any issues with the stipulation that we've come up with, and we've worked really hard to get there. We just need to make sure everything is in order before we go forward with it.
Thank you for your information.
Greg, this is Randy. I've got one question on let's see in this stipulation order. I guess it's 8 to where it talks about the petitioner does not contest the following allegations. down in G, it gives a period of 8 years, but only shows a 3-year suspension. Is that an error, or should that have said 3 years, or is the year in error? The number of years in error. It says 8 years, but then it shows from 2019 to 2022.
Let me pull that document up real quick. I'm gonna have to toggle on my laptop. Mr. Owens, if you could do the same, let's make sure we're on the same page while we have the board's attention.
Just for the record, this is Mike Begley, counsel for the board, assistant AG. And I am looking at it, and it was a good catch. It seems like there's an 8-year in the parenthetical, but the dates do not match up. It's a 3-year.
Good catch, Randy.
Very good catch. Mr. Owens and I will work on that if the board would allow us to continue this to a subsequent board meeting. We'll get that corrected.
Just for curiosity, what should it have been? Should it have been 8 years or 3 years? What did that mean to say?
I think it was 8 years because it's talking about the initial suspension.
Okay, all right.
It's talking about the initial suspension out of the informal hearing, and so I think that was supposed to be 8 years because that's what was decided there.
Thank you.
Okay, so that brings us to the motion before the board is a motion to continue.
This is Randy. I'll make that motion.
Byron, I'll second that.
Donnie, a second. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I'll do a roll call. Kevin Albrecht,
Yes.
Randy Dirth,
Yes.
Donnie Hunter,
Yes.
Carl Hurst,
Yes.
Wade Heaton.
Yes.
It's unanimous. So that brings us to item number 4 on our agenda, which is other business. Is there any other business the board would like to discuss at this time? If not, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I have a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call. Kevin Albrecht,
Yes.
Randy Dirth,
Yes.
Donnie Hunter,
Yes.
Carl Hurst,
Yes.
Wade Heaton.
Yes.
The meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for your attendance and your time.
Thank you.